Hello everyone, I welcome you all to today's daily news analysis. Really sorry for being late because of some technical issues we could not come up on time. But let's not waste any time and let's start with the news analysis for today. Okay, and the first news which we are going to discuss. So a lot of important news we are going to discuss from both the newspaper. And the first news which I have shortlisted for you all, is with regard to the current crisis ongoing in the Middle East. So again, the war between US and Iran, or attacks against US and Iran, has started, and now it is time to understand some keywords which have again come up in news. Okay, for example, we have earlier covered another very important island of Iran, which is the Kharg Island. Okay, and we studied there that the Kharg Island is the lifeline of Iran. It controls, or it basically does the 90% of the Iran oil export. Similarly, certain new targets have been attacked by the US armed forces. For example, one of the important island, another very important island of Iran which has been targeted, is the uh, Qasem Island. Okay, where it is? Okay, वो आगे आएगा, I think. Is the Qasem Island. So Qasem Island is another very important island. So what all key strategic points are there in this US-Iran war? That is going to be important points which we have to study for our examination purposes. So if you look at this map, you can see here this is the Strait of Hormuz and this is the basic shipping line. And you would see that there is a island very close to it which is known as Qasem Island. Okay, another very important island, very important strategic point, especially at the Strait of Hormuz, and it is one of the military bases of the IRGC also and the Iran's army also. So this is one of the island which is being targeted by USA in these specific attacks which are taking place. Okay, it belongs to Iran and lies at the eastern entrance of the Strait of Hormuz, and it separates mainland Iran by the narrow Clarence Strait. Okay, so there is this Clarence Strait. This is the Clarence Strait, which is basically dividing the mainland of Iran from this specific island. And very near to it is also the port of Bandar Abbas, which is again a very important port city of Iran. Okay, so we are going to study all of these. Okay, apart from it, what else are you going to study in your news? Is you are going to find out that it is talking about a US military command, the US Central Command, or CENTCOM. Okay, US militaries has divided the world into different geographical areas, and it has been given to different geographical commands, and a single geographical command is basically responsible for different geographical areas. Okay, so for example, this CENTCOM, this US military central command, was established in 1983. It is headquartered in MacDill Air Force Base, which is in USA only. But this is the central command which is responsible for a very large part in the Middle East, which is whole of Middle East, your Central Asian, parts of South Asia. Everything is covered or is under this central command only. And the current war between US and Iran, if someone asks you which command is responsible or is the active command for the US-Iran war, it is going to be the US military central command. Okay, and this central command has different bases also in these countries. One of the most important naval base or central command is in Bahrain, which basically houses US Navy's Fifth Fleet. Okay, so there are different fleets. The fifth fleet of US Navy is located in Bahrain. Okay, and this is the main base of the US Navy, from where all the naval attacks are taking place. Okay, what is the area of responsibility of this US Navy's Fifth Fleet? So think of it as the one of the most important fleet of the US Navy, because most contentious maritime areas are under this US Navy's Fifth Fleet only of USA. For example, the Persian Gulf, the Gulf of Oman, Arabian Sea, Red Sea, Gulf of Aden, parts of Indian Ocean, everything is under this US Navy's Fifth Fleet only. Okay, moreover, I have left one liner for you, so you have to tell me what is the capital of Bahrain here also. Okay, so we have covered Qasem Island, we have covered the Central Command, we have covered your Bahrain and the US Navy Fifth Fleet. What else you need to know? So some US military bases are also there, and which have been targeted by Iran in counter attack by USA. So USA has attacked Iran cities Bandar Abbas, Qasm Island. So Iran has also targeted US bases in the nearby countries. For example, in Bahrain, the US Navy's fifth fleet base has been targeted. In Qatar, the most important Al Udeid Air Base. And why this is important? Because this is the largest US military base in the Middle East. Okay, so this becomes important for you. So this is from, it is this base only from which most of the operation of USA in Middle East takes place. So Al Udeid Air Base becomes very important. Next is Kuwait. Kuwait also hosts a US base, which is Ali Al Salem Air Base, that has also been targeted. And in Saudi Arabia, Prince Sultan Air Base is there, which is again a base used by US Central Command only. All of these would be under US Central Command only. Why? Because US Central Command is responsible for Middle East. Okay, so all of this are under US only. So all of these military bases has been targeted by Iran during the current confrontation between US and Iran. Okay, so we have already covered the Qasm Island. What else you need to know about apart from Qasm Island? It is the port city of Bandar Abbas. So apart from Chahabar port, which India is also developing, which is on the western side of this Strait of Hormuz, this Bandar Abbas is currently the principal port city in the Persian Gulf, and it is again the main commercial port of Iran, especially for anything which is coming from Gulf of Oman and beyond. Okay, from here, because here it is the Persian Gulf, so all the Persian countries, all the Middle Eastern countries are there, and this beyond this is basically your India and other Asian countries. Okay, it is the capital of Hormozgan province. So it is part of the Hormozgan province of Iran, and this is the largest commercial port. So this is also something, Bandar Abbas, which you should know. Okay, so all of these are the important geographical location which you are going to study in news. That's why knowing all of this becomes important for you. Okay, so that was the first news. I just wanted to focus upon specific location which are covered in today's newspapers, and this is very important. If you want to get an edge over others in your examination, you need to do something extra. So everything has done the basic of US Iran. What extra you can do? You can know about the places which also are being targeted in this US Iran war. Okay, so we are done with the first topic. Now let's move to the second topic. Again, a really important topic. But before I start, let me go through the comment box, because I see some of you have answered the question which I've asked you. Okay, so Prashant and Devansh, yes, good afternoon. And then I see Story Soul and Ishan Sharma have answered Manama. Yes, exactly. The Bahrain's capital is Manama. That is also very important. And please wait for the 20 GK question, and please try to attempt those questions and mention it in the comment box. Even if you find the answers from internet and then type it in the comment box, that is also going to be helpful for you, because it creates a memory in your brain. Because you have taken some efforts to find out something, the chances are very high that you are going to remember it in the near future also. Okay, and yes, Devansh has again answered correctly that Bahrain's capital is Bahrain capital is Manama. Okay, moving on to the second news. Again, a very important news, and I am going to give you some basic details of another very important geopolitical issue. Okay, and this is with regard to the South China Sea dispute. Okay, so first let me give you the context. The context being that there is this sea, South China Sea, and as the name suggests, it is on the south. It lies on the south of the mainland China. Okay, and now the issue is that the country of China claims all of South China Sea is its own, that it is their personal sea. It is basically everything, whatever resources are there in South China Sea, China and China alone has all the rights to exploit those resources. But as is the case with other geopolitical disputes, here also there are other countries who are claiming that how can China claim all of the sea where even we are being located, and anything which is near to our shores should be our own resources. But China claims that historically this have been their backyard, this has been their part of their territory, their maritime territory, and they have the singular right to control it. Okay, and now because there was this dispute, there was a case in a permanent court of arbitration where it was decided against China. And now the context is that many countries, EU 14, 27 countries of EU and 14 other countries, UK, etc., they have reaffirmed the ruling on the South China Sea, claiming that China does not have the sole right over the South China Sea. Other countries of the areas also have their maritime right in the South China Sea. Okay, so in this context, let's understand the South China Sea dispute. Okay, and I have this specific map for you all, and this would help you properly understand that which are the parties which are the parties which are the parties to the South China Sea dispute, and which are the important islands which are being disputed between different parties, and what is this China dash line on the basis of which China is claiming a part or is claiming the whole of the South China Sea. Okay, so where is the South China Sea located? So this is located in the Western Pacific Ocean, and where exactly? So this is your China in red color, and you can see here it is on the south of China, but it is also, this sea is also surrounded by different countries. So Taiwan, which itself claims itself to be the China, Philippines, Brunei, Malaysia, Vietnam, all of these countries are the countries which are the coastal areas, which are the coastal countries to South China Sea. Okay, but China claims that all of this sea is its personal territory. Okay, so why it is important? Because it connects the Pacific Ocean with the Indian Ocean. Beyond this, in the Indian Ocean, here it is your Pacific Ocean. So this is a very important point, and it can be a maritime choke point also, and serves as one of the busiest international shipping route also. So it's a very busy route. Now, why this is so important? So this is important because one third of global maritime trade passes through the South China Sea. Although most of it is connected to China only, but if we talk globally also, one third of global maritime trade passes through this route only. That's why this is a very important sea route. Second is, it is also estimated to contain a significant reserves of oil and natural gas. Okay, so your oil and gas reserves are not just below the land surface. Many, maybe a very high amount might be available below the ocean surface also, and it is believed that below the South China Sea also there are a lot of oil and gas reserves also. Okay, also this is a very rich fishing ground. All of these countries, island countries, are usually fish eating. So here also all of these countries are also looking at the fishing grounds which are located in the South China Sea. Okay, so now let's look at the countries which are the main claimants to the South China Sea. So obviously China is there, which claims the entire South China Sea. So entire of South China Sea is claimed by China. But what about other countries? You can see here in the map also, you can see here Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei, and obviously where China is going to be asserting its claim, Taiwan is also going to assert its claim. So all of these countries which you can see in this map also are the countries which are claiming different parts of South China Sea as their own also. Okay, however, in this map and in this list you would see one country is missing, which is Indonesia. So Indonesia does not claim the disputed island. So there are a lot of islands, all of this Scarborough, Paracel, these are group of islands which are in South China Sea, and China claims that these islands belongs to China only. But other countries, for example, you can see here Scarborough Shoal or Spratly Island, they are much more closer to Philippines, Brunei, Malaysia rather than with China. But China claims that all of these are islands which are controlled by it. Okay, so Indonesia is missing here. Yes, Indonesia is here only, but it is not a party, does not claim any of the disputed islands. It does not say I have a share. But there is a problem that China's this 9-dash line overlaps with Indonesia's exclusive economic zone around the Natuna Islands. So Natuna Islands, so it's not visible in the map, but Natuna Islands are also there, which are under the control of Indonesia. Those are Indonesian islands, and China claims that the open ocean around the sea also is the maritime territory of China. But Indonesia claims Natuna Island belongs to Indonesia, and any water nearby an island has to be the sovereign maritime territory of that country only. Okay, so what is the rule? What is the international rule? How is Indonesia saying it is their territory? How come other countries are countering China's claim? So for that there is an international law known as UN clause. So in the end I'm going to give you a brief of UN clause also. Okay, but first let's try to understand this South China Sea dispute. Okay, so these are the countries and these are the countries and these are the specific dispute. Okay, moving on, what is China's claim? China claims that this China has drawn a 9-dash line. These 9 dashes you can see here, these 9 dashes are drawn in red color. China claims that the area or the maritime, all the sea which is located, which is in the 9-dash line area. Okay, whatever sea area is in the 9-dash area, all of it, all the islands, even if they are natural or artificial, everything belongs to China only. And this first China 9-dash line was first drawn in 1947. So when India got independent, China also drew a map wherein they drew this 9 dashes, and they claim that everything which is inside this part is part of India only. It encloses nearly 90%. And what is the basis of their claim? They claim that this is their historical right. They have the historical rights over the waters, islands and marine resources enclosed within this line. So they claim no other country but China only has right to the resources in this particular area. Most countries reject the 9-dash line because it is obviously not internationally recognized. Because if this would have been internationally recognized, none of these countries would have any access to anything, any maritime resources which are very near to their shore as compared to China. Think of this way. So area, this is this one area which is here. Some island might be here, and China claims an island so far away from it, maybe thousands of kilometers away, is their island because it is within the 9-dash zone. Okay. Anyway, but this is how China tries to control the South China Sea. Okay, now let's look into major disputed area. There are some minor dispute areas with different country, but there are certain major disputed areas. And remember, these disputes are not just between China and other countries. These countries also are basically fighting each other for control of these island group. First, I'm going to cover Spratly Island, which is like at the center, at the at about the center of the South China Sea, exactly at the center of the South China Sea. And this Spratly Island is not just disputed between China or one country. It is claimed by China, Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei and Taiwan. So everyone is claiming Spratly Island is their own. So this is one of the most disputed area. And why it is disputed? Because it is very much rich in fisheries and it is believed to contain a lot of oil and gas reserves also. China has done what? China has constructed artificial islands, airship, military facilities in this region, and currently they are the one who are actually controlling the Spratly Island. Next is the Parasil Island. You can see here Parasil Island. So why do I like this map? Because as you can see, everything is color coded. So the countries which are fighting for it, you can see the circle around the island. So 3 colors are there. One represents China, one represents Taiwan, and other represents Vietnam. Okay, here all the colors are mentioned, here all the colors are mentioned, so you can understand which particular island is disputed between which country. So Parasil Island, so this is claimed by China and Vietnam, and obviously Taiwan also. Currently this is under Chinese control. And third is your Scarborough Shoal, which is again claimed by China and the Philippines. So China is one of the claimant, Vietnam is a claimant, Philippines is a claimant, Taiwan is a claimant, but specifically this is between China and Philippines, and China has been exercising control over it since at least 2012. Okay, so these are the main disputed areas. Now, what happened in 2016? So in 2013, Philippines initiated an arbitration against China because in 2012, in the year 2012, there was dispute between China and Philippines with regard to control of this area. Okay, and in 2013, the Philippines initiated an arbitration proceedings against China under UN clause. Okay, so wait for understanding UN clause, but let's first understand the case. Okay, so this under this international law, Philippines filed a case against China claiming that China is basically violating international law by claiming all of South China Sea. They claim that these islands which are very near to Philippines belong to Philippines only. Okay, and this case went to the Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague. Okay, so if there is a dispute with regard to UN clause, usually such a case goes to this PC only, which is located in Hague only. Okay, so this Hague is very famous. It is in Netherlands, the capital of Netherlands. Okay, so now tell me this, The Hague also is the location of 2 other important judicial bodies. Which 2 judicial bodies am I talking about? Which of them which are also headquartered in The Hague also? Okay, so PC is also headquartered in The Hague, and this arbitration between China and Philippines for UN clause interpretation took place in the PCA, which is also located in Hague. Okay, finally on July 12, 2016, the judgment or the arbitral award came. We should remember this. China never accepted their jurisdiction. China claimed that it is not going to participate in the proceedings. It claimed that PCA does not have any jurisdiction over this specific issue and China is not going to contest it, which means it was an ex parte order, which means that China never participated in it. China did not had any say in this specific judgment. Okay, so now what were the key findings? So the court said that the China's 9-dash line has no legal basis under UN clause. It cannot be an international law that whatever the powerful country decide on the basis of some historical claim, that all of it belongs to them. You have to give proper evidences to show that you have been in control of this for a very long time, and they, let's say, they have been taken away by force from you, let's say in the past also. But you have to show evidence to show, you have to show evidences to prove that you were in control of these islands, you were in control of the South China Sea for the major part of the history. Okay, so it basically rejected the legal basis of 9-dash line. China cannot claim historical rights over resources within the 9-dash line. So this was the judgment, which means it basically agreed with Philippines and other countries that because 9-dash line does not have any legal basis, China does not have any claim over the South China Sea. China violated the Philippines sovereign rights by interfering with fishing and petroleum exploration within the Philippines exclusive economic zone. And what has been China's response? China said this specific judgment is null and void because I am not agreeing to it. Okay, I never participated in, so this is a null and void judgment. Okay, however, the other country said that you should follow, and the current context is what? The current context is EU and 14 other countries have reaffirmed that what the PC had decided in 2016 is the correct international law and China should follow it. But China has again reiterated its stand that the judgment is null and void and it is not going to be dictated. It is not going to be dictated by others what China should do. Okay, now let's understand, because UN clause, the international law of the sea, is at the center. Let's understand this UN clause also. Okay, so how do I know? Like, for example, India also has a large coastline. Sri Lanka is also located to very near to India. So there can be conflicting claims also with regard to that this maritime sea belongs to me. So how do we even divide the sea also? So we know how do we divide the land? We basically draw a border. But how do we divide our maritime areas? So to get to basically resolve such kind of dispute, we created a law. So that international law, which was adopted in 1982 and it came into force in the year 1994, was your UN clause, United Nations Convention on the Law of the Seas. It is sometimes also called as the Constitution of the Seas or the Constitution of the Open Ocean. Okay, and this defines different areas, different zones. So one is your territorial sea, one is contiguous zone, one is your exclusive economic zone, and a general geographical term, continental shelf. Okay, so let's say this is where my coast ends here. Okay, and from here the sea starts. Okay, so whenever if you have gone to a beach, straightforward, it is not the depth. It is not a deep ocean as soon as you go out of the beach. Okay, slowly it goes towards its depths increases. Okay, so if wherever my water touches my coast, that is considered to be the baseline. Okay, so from wherever the ocean water touches my coast, that is considered to be the baseline. Measuring from baseline up to 12 nautical miles. Here it is 12 m, it is 12 nautical miles. Okay, 1 nautical mile you can keep an average of around 2 kilometer is an average, 1.8 something. Okay, anyway, so territorial sea is up to 12 nautical miles. So measuring from my baseline up to 12 nautical mile is my territorial sea, and territorial sea is considered equivalent to my land borders only. Okay, so whatever this specific 12 nautical miles is considered as if anything has happened on the land of that country only. Okay, so all the laws, everything are just like what is applied on our seashore also. Okay, now another 12 nautical mile is added. So a total of 24 nautical miles from the baseline, it is considered contiguous zone. So what is contiguous zone? So contiguous zone is an area where my import-export law, my custom laws apply. Okay, so I do not have full control over it, but my custom laws apply. Okay, And then the third important area, which is considered to be exclusive economic zone, it is 200 nautical miles. Okay, it is around 200 nautical miles calculating from the baseline. Okay, and as the name suggests, this is the exclusive economic area under my control. Okay, so for any resources which lies in the exclusive zone, let's say if I'm talking about India would be having the first right or the exclusive right to exploit the resources, and it covers your all the resources which are in the water or below the water also. Okay, so remember, this is an exclusive economic zone, but no Indian law would apply on exclusive economic zone. Now it is a territory of international law for other aspects. Okay, and beyond 200 nautical miles, it is your high seas, which is otherwise called as international waters or high seas. Okay, high seas or international water, it is usually called that only, and then it is a international arena. Okay, and now there can be a lot of complexity to this UN clause, that if the sediment level is this, if the baseline is this, if the continental shelf is okay. Finally, the last term, continental shelf. So you can see here, this land is unbreakable. It is continuously going beyond the sea also. Okay, but there is no break in between. Okay, so if there is this large landmass which is beyond the sea, so then in certain cases even your baseline can be up to this level also. So your territorial sea, everything would be extending beyond the continental shelf also. Okay, so all of this is defined in the UN clause only. UN clause also, all of this is defined also. Okay, so you can understand here. So if I again show you the map, let's take one map. Okay, so if you would see it, this map, so let's take example of Malaysia. Okay, Malaysia, so it's 12 nautical miles is here, it's 24 nautical miles would be here, and 200 nautical miles would be here. So if it is claiming Spratly to be its island, or Philippines is claiming, it is understood. But what is the basis of China claiming? Because possibly its 200 nautical miles would end here only, but it is saying that an island located, let's say 1000 nautical miles away from it, is also part of its maritime territory only. Okay, so you can understand that how this UN clause helps us to divide the maritime areas, different islands also. Okay, so this is with regard to UN clause. Okay, so I hope you have understood UN clause. Okay, yes, ask certain question. First, Ishant Story Soul 5 says you are teaching so well. Thank you. Devansh says COA. COA, Court of Arbitration, is PCA, the other name for PCA only. ICJ and ICC, exactly. Story and Ishant Sharma, you are correct. Yes, it is ICC and ICJ, International Court of Justice and International Criminal Court, which are also located there. Okay, sir, if a country wants to enlarge EEC, so is it possible? Okay, yes, it is possible, but it is looked down upon. For example, for today we have the technology to create an artificial island also. So I can pump let's say soil over it, sand over it, coastal sand, and then I can create an artificial island also, and then I can say that this is my territory. And let's say if I have an island also, for example, my Andaman Nicobar Islands are located very far from the sea, but my exclusive economic zone, my territorial sea, not just extend from the mainland. If I have a island also beyond 200 nautical miles around this island also, I would be having my exclusive economic zone. So if I create an artificial island and then I say that this is my territory, then on that basis I can say that this would be my exclusive economic zone. Okay, and this is how some countries try to extend their exclusive economic zone in the open seas also. Okay, in the open seas also. So yes, theoretically it can be extended let's say ki yes, by creating artificial island I can do so, but it is looked down upon, and as of now wherever such a case has gone, for example in this case also in PCA, China's claim was, China never argued this, but China had created artificial island to claim that now beyond this area also all of this is my exclusive economic zone only. So then the PCA said that your exclusive economic zone cannot be extended in this way also. Okay, so that would be a gray area. I can't say it clearly that you can create, or I can't say this also you cannot create it. But yes, this is one of the ways which is used by different countries to extend their exclusive economic zone. Okay, anyway, let's move to the next one. Next is ISRO successfully carries out test of Gaganyaan system. So yes, Gaganyaan system, do not forget that although it is not in use, this is not important. Gaganyaan, news related to Gaganyaan keeps coming in your newspaper. So Gaganyaan is also important, and not just Gaganyaan, but any other space mission which is related to Gaganyaan, because Gaganyaan is sending men into space. India also wants to become the fourth country in the world to send men into space. Okay, and in future we would like to send men to moon also. So which are the countries which have the capability to send a person in the space, their own capability to send a person into space, which are the countries, or which is the country which has sent people on moon? All of these also becomes important questions for you to consider. Okay, so now the context is basically that for Gaganyaan we have to do different experiments, and another related experiment of Gaganyaan has been successfully conducted. Okay, so now the examiner is not going to ask you that at which stage are we in terms of testing for Gaganyaan, but it can ask you very basic, very simple question regarding Gaganyaan. So if you keep revising them, if you keep adding certain points to your notes, then your topics are properly covered. Okay, so if I talk about Gaganyaan mission, Gaganyaan is India's first indigenous human space flight mission. Okay, so first indigenous human space flight mission, because this is not the first time some Indian is going to go into space. As of now, there are 2 Indians which have gone into space and have come back successfully. Can you name the first person, first Indian person to go into space? Okay, anyway, try to answer it in the comment box. So this Gaganyaan mission was announced in 2018 on the Independence Day. On Independence Day, we announced it. It aims to demonstrate India's capability to send astronauts, and we are calling them as Yom Nauts or as Gagan Yatris. Both the terms are being used, into low Earth orbit and safely bring them back to Earth. So what is this low Earth orbit? So orbit which is very near to the Earth atmosphere is considered as low Earth orbit, usually starting from 200 kilometers up to 1600 kilometers. It is considered as a low Earth orbit. Okay, so I can see that already some of you have answered it. Good. Anyway, so it wants to send astronauts into low Earth orbit and then to safely bring them back to the Earth also. Okay, that is the Gaganyaan mission. Who's developing it? So it is being developed by our space agency ISRO only. From where we are going to launch it? So it is going to be launched from the main spaceport of India, which is your Satish Dhawan Space Center, Sriharikota. So as of now, we only have one operational space station, but we are also developing another space station in south of India. Let me give you a hint. This is in Andhra Pradesh, Sriharikota. The second is being developed in Tamil Nadu. But at what place? If you know the answer, let me know in the comment box. Okay. Anyway, how many astronauts are going to be taken up by the taken in the Gaganyaan mission? So 3 astronauts would be taken. So you might get confused. 4 have been shortlisted. Out of those 4, only 3 are going to go. Okay, anyway, so where are they going to go? So they are going to move into low Earth orbit around 400 kilometers, and they are going to be there for approximately 3 days. So mission duration is 3 days. So they are going to revolve around the Earth. Okay, revolve around the Earth for 3 days at 400 kilometer distance, and then they are going to re-enter through Earth's atmosphere, land in Bay of Bengal or Arabian Sea, and then Navy is going to take them. Okay, what are the objectives? Why we are doing Gaganyaan? So we also want to demonstrate that we also have the human space flight capabilities. We want to develop safe crew transportation and recovery system. So many a times, many historical inventions which humankind has done, a lot of it has been directly or indirectly derived from certain invention which was done for space missions. Okay, a very good example would be MRI machines. So MRI machines which are used for scanning of our bodies were originally designed for some space work. Okay, and then we understood that there is a dual use also. We can use it in health sector also. So then we shifted it for that use also. Okay, so there are a lot of direct and indirect benefits of doing space missions. Master human rated launch vehicle technology. So we are creating a launch vehicle, a rocket which can take humans into space also, and we are laying the foundation for our very own indigenous future space station and deep space mission also. So in India also would like to contribute to future long range space mission also. So for that we are basically laying down the foundation. Okay, which specific rocket we are going to use? So we are creating a new rocket, human rated LVM-3. So LVM-3 rocket is well known. We had earlier used it for Chandrayaan-3, and this is the most powerful rocket which India has, which is Launch Vehicle Mark 3. Earlier it was called as GSLV Mark 3, but now it is called as Launch Vehicle Mark 3. So Gaganyaan is going to use the human rated version of the Launch Vehicle Mark 3. Okay, 4 astronauts which have been shortlisted are all 4 group captains of Indian Air Force: Prashant, Balakrishna Iyer, Ajit Krishnan, Angad Pratap, and Shubhanshu Shukla. Okay, Shubhanshu Shukla has already gone to space and have also gone to the International Space Station. So he has the most experience of space out of these 4 people. So possibly, don't think that he has already gone to space. Let's give opportunity to other 3. My bet is that definitely he's going to go, because it is would be an India's indigenous mission, and we would be requiring someone who has prior experience of space. Okay, so Subhanshu Shukla has already gone into space. So tell me the mission which took Subhanshu Shukla into space and to the International Space Station. Okay, so these are the 4 persons which have been shortlisted for Gaganyaan. Okay, so that was regarding Gaganyaan. But always remember, whenever you are doing a topic, try to do related information also. For example, you should know which are the countries which have the capability to independently send human into space. So currently only 3 countries have this specific capability. First is Soviet Union, and yes, not US, but Russia was the first country. Soviet Union was the first country to send human into space. Okay, remember this point. So in 1961, Yuri Gagarin became the first astronaut ever to go into space, or first astronaut ever only. Okay, then it was US which did it in 61 only, and US astronaut's name was Alan Shepard. And then in 2003, China followed suit, and it also sent a human space flight in 2003. And the first astronaut was Yang Liwei. Okay, Yang Liwei. And if Gaganyaan succeeds in its mission, then it would become the 4th country to independently send humans into space. Okay, so this is with regard to the countries that have independently sent humans into space. Now, countries which have landed human on the moon. So as of now, only one country has ever done it, and it has done multiple times. And first time this was done was in 1969. Okay, so 8 years after we send men into space, US became the first country to send men on moon also. And the first 2 astronauts who went to space on aboard Apollo 11 were Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin. Okay, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin were the first 2 humans to land on the moon. Okay, but interestingly, in Apollo 11 there were 3 astronauts. There was third person also. He was Michael Collins, but he remained in the orbit only. These 2 people went to the went and land on the moon also. Okay, Neil Armstrong became the first human to walk on the moon on 20th July 1969. Okay, so this is also important. Then countries that have soft landed on the moon, this we have studied when we did the Chandrayaan 3 mission. Okay, so first country to do so was Soviet Union. Okay, so first country uncrewed mission to be sent soft landed on moon was done by Soviet Union again. Okay, so what was the first achievement was by US. So that was the first men on moon. Before it, everything was first done by US, not US, sorry, by Soviet Union or Russia only. Second was US, third was China, and fourth was India, and fifth is Japan. Okay, so which was the Indian mission which basically led India to soft land on the moon? Okay, which made India the 4th country to soft land on the moon? You can tell me in the comment box. Okay, and with this, we are done with this topic also. Let me see if you have answered these questions. So, yes, correct. Ishan, Story, Devans. Yes, you are correct. Rakesh Sharma was the first Indian to go into space. And then Sori Shol has mentioned Kul Shekhari Patinam. That is also correct. Yes, that is the first. That is the second spaceport, a private spaceport being developed by India. And Ishan has answered Axiom 4 mission, which is also correct. Okay, so all are your correct answers. Okay, anyway, now let's move to the next one. Let's see if you could answer the rest of the question which I also asked you. Okay, moving on to Indian Express, we do both the newspapers. So this is with regard to Bishnoi indictment, the long road to extradition. Okay, I'm sure you must have heard of this name, Lawrence Bishnoi. Another now cool gangster era. We have entered into cool gangster era. A lot of young people, hopefully not any one of you or your friends is interested in these activities, but now he has become very popular. His photographs are everywhere. He is someone who's a gangster, and he's currently lost in Tihar jail. Okay, but as is the case with many gangsters with their large gangs, they have been able to run their operations from jails also. Okay, so this person and other persons are not just active in India. They have created a transnational criminal network, and they operate in India, US, Canada, and other countries also. Okay, and now it is not just India. The US Department of Justice has also indicted Lawrence Bishnoi and his other associates for criminal cases, for in criminal cases in US, Canada also, and now they want to extradite him to US and other persons who are involved in such crimes to the US. Okay, so currently he is in jail. So what is the process by which US can ask India to send him to send him to USA to face justice? So that is called as the extradition law. Okay, so what is extradition? Extradition is basically a request from another country to send an accused to their country to face justice. So let's say if someone has committed crime in India and that person runs away to some foreign country, let's say US or UK, then we send an extradition request asking that country to please send that person to India so that he can be tried in a court of law. Okay, and that is considered as extradition. So it's a formal legal process through which such a convicted person or an accused is sent to the other country for prosecution. Okay, so now usually extradition can be done on a case to case basis also. It is not necessary that every time you need to have a treaty or a law to do extradition. It can be done by personal understanding also. Okay, however, it is more appropriate that if you have proper legal recourse for extraditing a person, because if you would be doing it on a case to case basis, a lot of cases would be filed in the court claiming that I should not be sent because this would lead to my violation, and there would be unnecessary delay. So what India and US have done is they have signed a bilateral treaty. Okay, so usually a bilateral extradition treaty exists between two countries wherein they set the rules of extradition, and if the crime which has been committed or the act which has been committed falls in that treaty, then you are basically extradited to that country. Okay, so it is generally carried out through bilateral extradition treaty or through domestic extradition law. Okay, and India has a domestic extradition law which is called as the Extradition Act of 1962. Okay, so now I'm not just giving you the general extradition law, I'm also covering the India US extradition law also. Okay, so India and US extradition is governed by two laws. One is your Extradition Act of 62 and other would be the India US Extradition Treaty of 1997. So we have a treaty also, and we also have a act also, statutory law also. Okay, now most important thing which you need to understand, which would be helpful for you for not just GK purpose but also for legal purpose, that what are the key principles of an extradition. Okay, specifically if an extradition has to take place between India and US, let's say of Lawrence Bishnoi, then what are the conditions, what are the principles which should be fulfilled. Okay, so first is the principle of dual criminality, a very simple principle. So you can only extradite a person to another country if a person has committed a crime or has committed an act which is an offense in both the countries. For example, if someone has committed a murder in USA, it can be known by some other name. It can be called as homicide. Okay, it can be called homicide there. It might not be murder also, but homicide or murder, whatever the name be, it is an act which is an offense in US also, in India also. Okay, and the second condition is that the punishment for it should be more than 1 year. So if you have committed a crime, if you have committed an act which is an offense in both the countries and the punishment in both the countries more than 1 year, then it is considered a extraditable crime. Okay, it is an extraditable crime, which is the case if it follows the principle of dual criminality. Okay, second is there is an exception to it. So yes, there can be certain offenses certain acts which are offenses everywhere, but if the extradition is granted because because of a political offense, because of a political case. For example, a country wants to extradite someone because that person, let's say, committed corrupt practices in an election. Okay, so this would be a political offense, and in such cases usually the person is not extradited. Okay, let's take example of Sheikh Hasina. Bangladesh has also requested extradition under the India-Bangladesh Extradition Treaty for extradition of Sheikh Hasina, but India said that there are chances of political trial of this person, so we are not going to send that person. So that is also allowed. Okay, but there are certain exceptions. So let's say there is a political offense, but at the same time there are offenses like murder, terrorism, hostage taking, or drug trafficking. This would be an exception, and then even if political offense is one of the argument, still the person would be extradited. Okay, third is nationality is not a bar. So it is very simple, which means Lawrence Bishnoi, it doesn't matter if he is an Indian citizen, even an Indian citizen can be extradited under an extradition treaty to the third country where that person has come, second country where he has committed the crime. Okay, and fourth is your rule of specialty, which basically says that an extradited person can ordinarily be tried only for the offenses for which extradition was granted. So let's say if US claims that we are going to try this guy for theft offense, but later on they put other charges of theft along with theft, and they also put charges of, let's say, murder, then that person cannot be tried for murder, even though evidence might prove there might be a proper case of murder against that person, but still he cannot be tried for murder because the extradition was only done for that specific case. Okay, but yes, if the other countries are agreed, then you can do so if it is consented to. Otherwise, extradition is limited to the offenses for which a person was extradited. Okay, so these are some very important principles which you should know. Now, let's understand something very specific with regard to India. So, what is the extradition process, or which is the authority for extradition process in India? So, extradition process is done by Ministry of External Affairs. So, remember, it is Ministry of External Affairs because it is a law and order issue. Prison system is involved in it, so Ministry of Home Affairs is going to be consulted, but it is primarily done by which ministry? It is done by Ministry of External Affairs. Next question, can India refuse extradition? क्या extradition को refuse किया जा सकता है? Answer is yes. Even if a case would be covered by extradition treaty or extradition act, still they can say that we are not going to do so because it is a sovereign decision. Okay, it is a sovereign decision. Remember, extradition is not a judicial decision, it's not a legal decision, it's an executive decision. So if the executive believes that they should not be extraditing that person, even if the case squarely falls under extradition treaty or the act, still the person is not extradited. Okay, next is, can India delay extradition? Yes, there is one specific case where extradition can be delayed, which is, let's say, if a person is being prosecuted in India, and in that case the Indian government can decide that once the prosecution is complete, or let's say once the punishment in India is complete, then only we are going to send this person to the other country. The other case can be, let's say the government or the police authorities are investigating a crime. They are trying to extract information from that person. In that case also extradition request can be rejected or delayed. Okay, and fine, what about extradition for crimes committed abroad? So let's say some Indian citizen or a foreign citizen, not necessarily Indian citizen, if an Indian citizen or a foreign citizen committed a crime in some other country against India or against Indian citizen, can that person be extradited to India? So answer again would be yes. So if a crime is committed abroad, then in that case also that person can be extradited to India, and vice versa also. Okay, so in case you want to read this, always you can pause the video and can read it. Okay, so these are the specific points with regard to extradition. Okay, so we are done with this topic also. Let's move to the next news again from Indian Express. But first, let me look at your answer. Ishant has answered Axiom 4, which is correct. Devansh has answered Chandrayaan 3, which is also correct. Sir, what if a person is charged for murder, but in India murder is not crime, then extradition will happen or not? So again, yes, let's say अगर if in India में murder जो है वो crime नहीं है, it's not an offense, then extradition cannot happen. The principle of dual criminality specifically provides that it should be a crime in both countries. Sir, Vijay Mali is not extradition from UK. So again, you have to prove that this was an extraditable crime. So his case is ongoing in London. The extradition case is still ongoing in London, and Indian government is not able to prove that he has committed a crime or offense in India. Okay, so this is being contested in the courts. Yes, Tahavur Hussain Rana. So yes, he was one of the mastermind of the 2008 Mumbai blast. So he was one of the one of the accused in that specific case, and therein he was caught in US. US courts had actually tried him. He was sent he was convicted also there, and then he was finally extradited to India. Okay, he was also extradited to India only in 2025 for getting more information. Okay, yes, 2000 in Mumbai attack. That's also correct. Okay, moving on to the next one. So we are covering two space related news. So we had covered Gaganyaan mission, and we are now covering an achievement which is done by China. So China has become the second country to basically uh, perfect to what to have this technology has successfully has tested the reusable rocket technology. So as of now, only one country, or I should say only, yes, one country, multiple companies there that have the reusable rocket technology. So you can already answer, you can already tell me in the comment box which company or which rocket am I talking about. Very soon I'm going to give you the answer. So try to be quick in answering this, which is the company and which is the first rocket which has perfected the reusable rocket technology now. Not just the country, I'm asking you the company now. Okay. Anyway, so just like USA, China is the second country which has perfected a reusable rocket. So, what is a reusable rocket? So, usually a normal rocket, a conventional rocket, you can use it for one launch only. But now, because rocket has different parts, at least the first rocket booster part can be used again, can be reused again. So that for that specific thing, China has also perfected the technology. China also successfully landed its first reusable rocket, which has been named Long March 10B. Okay, so what is the name of China's reusable rocket? It is named as Long March 10B, and with this, China has become the second country to demonstrate reusable orbital rocket technology. Okay, so let's study about these reusable rockets now. So NASA, SpaceX. Okay, SpaceX is the first company. NASA also had this technology. The space shuttle was the first partially reusable rocket, but SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket is considered to be the world's first operational reusable orbital rocket. Okay, and why that is the case? Because although the space shuttle can be considered the first reusable rocket, but in that case, a lot of refurbishment. So all the parts could not be recovered. Some of the parts you had to refurbish. But in this case, this Falcon 9, SpaceX Falcon 9 is the first fully operational reusable orbital rocket. Okay, and when did it did its first reusable landing? It was done in 2015. Okay, now which are the major space companies or agency which have this capability right now? So first is obviously SpaceX. It has a rocket Falcon 9, and it also have a heavy lift rocket which is Falcon Heavy, and it is also planning another one. So it would be the first reusable full system under development, which would be Starship. Okay, so not just first stage, but the whole rocket full body would be reusable. That would be done by Starship. Okay, and this is not the only company. There is another US company, Blue Origin. So tell me which company is the parent company of Blue Origin, or who's the owner of Blue Origin? That can also be your answer. Okay, it also has a reusable rocket, New Shepard, and it is currently testing another rocket which is New Glenn. Okay, there was this one failed rocket, and its picture become very popular because of the blast. Okay, in Florida it was being tried recently. So New Glenn was being tested, new technology was being tested, and it all of it basically got blasted. Okay, so tell me who's the owner of this Blue Origin company? Okay, so these are two companies, and now China has become the second country. This Long March 10B has become the third type of rocket which is going to be a reusable rocket. What about India? India currently does not have a reusable rocket, but we have been doing our technological demonstration, and we developed this. Okay, we developed this reusable launch vehicle technological demonstrator. So as of now, we have not perfected the technology, but as a demonstrator, as a prototype, we have been able to do this experiment in 2016 itself. And the first experiment which we did was called as Pushpak. Okay, so Ravan also had Pushpak Viman. So named after that mythological rocket, or by mythological Viman, we have also named our technological demonstrator, reusable launch vehicle technological demonstrator, as Pushpak. Yes, correct. So Ishan, Devansh, Story Soul have answered. Yes, Jeff Bezos, Amazon owner, is the owner of Blue Origin. Okay, now let's move to the next one. Again, very important, and this is with regard to the winners of 2026 Wimbledon tournament. So Wimbledon, which is the oldest tennis tournament, Grand Slam tournament in the world, which was first played in 1877, and it has been still played every year in London, UK at UK. And this year there were not new winner, there was a new women's winner, but uh, Italy's Jannik Sinner has become the fourth person now. He has become the fourth person to defend his title, which means he was the winner previous year also. So he has been able to successfully defend his Wimbledon title, and this is his fifth Grand Slam title. So the biggest tournament of tennis are called as Grand Slams. So there are four Grand Slams. So do you know which are the four Grand Slams of the world? Tell me in the comment box, because in the next slide we are going to look into the four Grand Slams. So before I move the slide, try to answer it in the comment box. So Italy's Jack Sinner defeated Germany's Alexander Zverev to win the 2026 Wimbledon men's final. Okay, so remember this, and you need to remember the country also. You need to know the runner-up also, because in the previous ALET exam they had asked you the runner-up of a tournament. Okay, so that's why this becomes important. Okay, so Wimbledon singles is this significance. Sinner won his second consecutive Wimbledon title. It was his fifth Grand Slam title. Only the fourth man in the last 25 years to successfully defend a Wimbledon's men's single title. Okay, I asked you which are the four Grand Slams. As of now, no one has answered. I expect them to answer very soon. Anyway, these are the four Grand Slams. So what are the four most important tennis tournaments? Australian Open, which is the first tournament of the year, followed by French Open, then your Wimbledon, which we have just discussed, and in the year end you have the US Open. So these are the four or biggest tournaments. There are other tournaments also, but these are considered as the four biggest tournaments in tennis. Okay, so you need to know at least the singles winner and your singles winners, both men and women, and their runner-ups in all these four Grand Slams. This can be asked anywhere. This can be asked in any examination which are conducted in a year. Okay, moreover, because he is the second he's the fourth person to do so. The other persons are Novak, Rafael, and Roger Federer, apart from Carlos Alcaraz. So these are also one of the considered to be the GOAT players of tennis and most Grand Slam men's single tournament. So here Jannik Sinner just won fifth, but there are people who have won 20 or more. Okay, and the person who has won the most Grand Slam in their career is Novak Djokovic, who has won 24 Grand Slams, and Jannik Sinner basically defeated Novak Djokovic in the semi-finals only. So 24 titles for Novak Djokovic, Grand Slam titles, 22 for Rafael Nadal and 20 for Roger Federer. Okay, also you need to know the women's single list also. Champion was Linda Noskova from Czech Republic. Interestingly, the runner-up Karolina Muchkova is also from Czech Republic, which basically means that this time it was all Czech Republic finals. Okay, at least in the women's tournament, it was both Czech players who were contesting in the tournament, and Linda Noskova from Czech Republic is also the first Grand Slam. This was her first Grand Slam singles title also. Interestingly, both of them have played for Czech Republic together also in a doubles women's tournament. Okay, so former doubles partner Linda Noskova defeated Karolina Muchkova to won the Wimbledon 2026 singles result also. And Linda Noskova is also the youngest female winner of Wimbledon in the last 15 years. Okay, in the last 15 years, if we just consider the last 15 years, she is the youngest Wimbledon tournament winner also. Okay, so this was the result of Wimbledon, and with this we are done with the news analysis for today, and it is time to look into the 20 plus 1 bonus question for you all. Okay, now I can see Story Soul has answered Australian Open, French Open, Roland Garros, Wimbledon and US Open. Yes, correct. Okay, so now let's look into the 20 GK question along with the bonus question. Let's see if you can answer these. Okay. Anyway, let's look at the first one. Kasm Island recently seen in the news belongs to which country? So who is the owner or who has the sovereign authority over this island? Okay. Anyway, Anyway, so again, this would be easy for you to do it, attempt it today, but this would be difficult if it would have been asked you without any context of the news analysis. Second question. The headquarter of US Navy Fifth Fleet is located in which country? Where is the US Navy's Fifth Fleet located? Third question. Which of the following countries does not have an overlapping claim in the South China Sea? So out of these four, three countries have claims, overriding claims, overlapping claims with China. One country does not. Which is that country? Okay. Moving on to the fourth one. The Spratly Island are claimed by all of the following except which country? Which country among the South China Sea disputing country does not claim the Spratly Island? So what would be your answer to fourth? And finally, fifth one. The permanent court of arbitration is located in or is located at which place? Okay, what would be your answer to fifth? Okay, Story Soul, you have to answer by first numbering the question. So let's say if you are answering the fifth one, if you say fifth A is the correct, then write A, 5B, 5C, 5D. Then I would know which question you are answering. Let's discuss this first five. So answer to first is going to be A, correct? Yes, it is Iran. Qasm Island belongs to Iran. Second, headquarter of US Navy. Second ka you have answered as C, which is also correct. It is in Bahrain. Third ka, which other country does not have an overlapping claim? So Japan is not a South China Sea disputing party. So third ka answer would be A. Okay, so you did not answer this earlier. Anyway, four dekhte hain. Spratly Island are claimed by all of the following except. So which of the country is not a party to Spratly Island? So obviously China is one of those. Brunei and Malaysia are also there. Indonesia is one which is not a contestant. Okay, Indonesia is also not considered as a South China Sea disputing party. So fourth, the answer would be D. And fifth, PC is located in The Hague. Fifth answer is C, which you have given correctly. Now let's look at the next five questions now. Under UN clause, the exclusive economic zone extends up to what distance? So what is the length? What is the distance or length to which a country's EEZ extends up to? 12, 24, 100 or 200 nautical miles. Seventh, which of the following country has not ratified the UN clause? Okay, out of these four countries, one country has not signed it. Which is the country which has not signed it? Interesting सवाल है. China, US, India or Philippines. Eighth, Gaganyaan mission is expected to carry how many astronauts? So tell me, how many astronauts are going to fly as Gaganyatris in the Gaganyaan mission? Is it 1, 2, 3 or 4? Let's look at the ninth one. Ninth kya hai? Which of the following is not one of India's selected Gaganyaan astronaut designate? Okay, which of them is not one of the four people who's going to be sent to space? Okay, very easy question. Okay, just by looking at the option, you can easily answer it. And 10th, which mission successfully landed the first human on the moon? Okay, this we have discussed also today. So, which was the first mission? Okay, sixth ka you have answered. Okay, D or B. The answer is D, 200 nautical miles. Sixth ka it is D. Seventh ka you have answered as A or B. The answer is B. Okay, China, India, Philippines, everyone has signed it. US also had signed it but has not ratified it. Okay, so US is one of the non-signatory, not ratifactory, non-ratifying country. Okay, remember this. Okay, US is also not a signatory. And I'll tell you one more. I'm giving you an interesting answer now. Interesting thing you can remember. Iran. Iran is also not a signatory of UN clause. Okay. So remember this, Iran, US both have not signed the UN clause agreement. Seventh answer is B. Eighth पे आते हैं. Eighth का you have answered as C or D. Eighth का answer would be C, not D. Four have been shortlisted. Out of those four, only three are going to go. Eighth का answer would be C. Ninth पे आते हैं. Ninth, good. You have given the right answer. Some of you have given wrong answer. Rakesh Sharma is not part of Gaganyaan. He was the first Indian astronaut to go into space. And 10th का you have answered as mistype हो गया. It's okay. 10th का answer would be B. Okay, so Apollo 11 was the first mission, which was the last human space mission to moon. Okay, what was the last human mission to moon? Okay, when humans landed on the moon, which was the last mission? Okay, 11 to 15 पे आते हैं. Which Apollo 11 astronaut remained in lunar orbit while the other two landed on the moon? Okay, tell me. We have discussed all the 4 names. So what would be your answer to 11th now? 12th पे आते हैं. Under the principle of dual criminality, an offence is extraditable only if it is punishable by imprisonment of more than 6 months, 1 year, 3 years, or 5 years. So, what is the condition for dual criminality principle to apply? 13 देखते हैं. Under the principle of dual criminality, which of the following is most important? Which is the most important one? 13 का. The offence must have been committed in both countries. The offence must have the same name in both countries. The punishment must be identical in both countries. The act must constitute a serious crime in both countries. What would be your answer to 13? This is checking your understanding of extradition. 14th, under the India-US extradition treaty, extradition cannot ordinarily be granted for murder, drug trafficking, terrorism, political offences. So what would be your answer to 14 then? And 15, in India, the extradition process is primarily handled by the which ministry handles it? I should have incorporated this. MHA should have been a better option. Then this would have been very confusing for some. Okay, 11th देखते हैं. 11th का you have answered as C. बिल्कुल सही. Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, Apollo 11 astronauts who went to moon. They landed on the moon. Michael Collins remained in the orbital only, in the orbital spacecraft. Alan Shepard was the first US man in space. Okay, so 11th का answer is C. 12th का answer would be B. Good. 12th का आपने C क्यों दिया है? 12th का answer is B. 1 year. 13th का answer would be 13th का answer would be A. I know it was in a hurry, but again you have to understand how to take pressure. So try to do it as fast as possible and try to do it correctly. 13th answer is not B, C, D, it is A. Read it again. Okay, in case you are a CLAT prep student and you have access to me, you can come and ask me if you have not understood this. Okay, 14th पे आते हैं. 14th का you have answered as D, which is correct. Yes, political offense is an exception. It is asking you the exception of extradition. 15th ka you have answered as A. Chalo, finally this one is correct. Ministry of External Affairs. Okay, let's look at the 5+1 bonus question now. Last 5+1 bonus question. Which of the following is a reusable rocket developed by China? So which one of them is the reusable rocket developed by China? What is the name? 17th, who won the Wimbledon's men's single title? Who won the singles title? Djokovic, Alexander Zverev, Carlos Alcaraz or Jannik Sinner? 18th, who holds the record for the most Grand Slam men's single titles in the Open era? Hint दे रहा हूं, 24 Opens title, Grand Slam title has been won by this person. 19th, who won the Wimbledon women's single title? इनमें से किसने women's single title जीता है? Okay, so all the previous winner and this year's runner-up have been mentioned. 20th, let's see if you can answer the 20th and 21st. Warren Anderson, often seen in the news regarding extradition. So this was one person who was guilty of a crime or who was guilty of something in India, and he was from USA. He headed a company. You have to tell me which company he headed. And there was this one tragedy. Then he ran away to USA. We requested extradition, but because of lack of evidences, the extradition request was denied to us. So he was the head of which company? That is the question. And 21, who was the last human to walk on the moon? I also asked you. देवांशेष, बट सर आइडेंटिकल क्राइम होना चाहिए ना, नेम अलग हो तो आपने कहा था कि क्राइम सिमिलर होना चाहिए. उसमें लिखा है क्राइम नहीं लिखा, वहां लिखा है पनिशमेंट. ठीक है, क्राइम नहीं लिखा है, वहां पनिशमेंट लिखा है. रीड योर क्वेश्चन 14 अगेन. Okay, so tell me 21 का आंसर क्या डालोगे आप? Last woman human to walk on the moon, that was the Apollo 17 mission, जब last time human landed on the moon. So who was the last human to walk on the moon as of 2026? See, here it says punishment. Okay, not punishment, crime. Act must be crime. Okay, 16 ka you have answered as A or C, which is correct is C. Long March 10B, not 5. 17th ka you have answered as A, which is correct. Jannik Sinner is this year's women's Wimbledon's men's single winner. 18th ka you have answered as B. Yes, Novak Djokovic, which is correct. 19th ka D or A, the answer is D. Always read till your D option. Many students look at this, they recall it somehow. Yes, I have read this name in the singles title, women's single title, and they in a hurry mark A. Remember, 19th answer would be D. 20th, Warren Anderson related to which company? So he is related to Union Carbide Corporation. I am talking about the 1984 Bhopal gas tragedy. So he was, or he is the CEO. He is the CEO. Warren Anderson was the CEO of Union Carbide Corporation, and interestingly, he was in India when this accident took place, from a private charter craft. He actually ran away the very same night. Okay, and many people believe that the Indian government facilitated his travel to USA. Okay, this is a conspiracy theory, but Warren Anderson is related to Union Carbide Corporation, so he was also one of the person which India wanted extradited to India. And finally, last human to walk on the moon, 21 का answer is A, Eugene Cernan. Okay, so 21 का आंसर होगा A. ठीक है, अच्छे क्वेश्चन थे आई थिंक, राइट? Anyway, so if you have still any doubt, anything you want to ask, you can ask me in the comment box. Okay, and that's it from today's session. Thank you and have a very nice day. Please like the video and share it with your friends also if you find it important and interesting. Okay, thank you.